Welcome back to Under Oath, where sales takes the stand. If you are new here, every episode of Under Oath, we put sales strategies, tactics, and ideas to the proverbial stand. We bring insight and experience from our background in sales leadership, enablement, and decades of sales experience to determine the truth. What does it actually take to grow and scale a world-class sales team? Let's welcome back the defense. First, we got Zach Ramey, head of revenue at Rankings.io. Myself, Scott Knutson, director of revenue operations at Rankings. And of course, our ringer, Cole Castleberry, head of sales at Rankings. Gentlemen, welcome back. Normally I ask, what should we bring to the bench? I think it might be my turn to bring something to the bench.
It's your go, Scott.
Let's see. So how do we feel about the chair in which we sit in? Do you feel like it makes an impact in selling? Do you feel like it's one of those things where it's like you could sit on a stool, you could sit on a 500, it doesn't matter? Or do you feel like there's an impact when you invest in seating for selling? What are your thoughts there real quick, boys?
I'll kick us off. I've been known to be a bougier guy at some things. My office setup specifically, I 100% will say that what you sit in all day makes a difference into the effectiveness of your work. I will also say that I think you need to refresh that. I think I'm in the refresh period right now where I need a new seat, as this one's not fulfilling its old duties.
My back would say that it matters a lot. my back cares about the chair that I'm sitting in since I'm in it for a while every day. But absolutely. I mean, I think I'm like Cole. I'm pretty bougie, unfortunately, to the bank account. But at the end of the day, I think it matters quite a bit. I think it matters for yourself. I think it matters for the people that's looking at you. Like, do you invest? I feel like if you invest in yourself, people see that and you think that you're going to invest back in them. So it might be something little, but I think a lot of people notice it.
It's little subtle things, right? It's like wearing a little bit nicer clothes. They see it. It just kind of says something subconsciously.
That's it.
Love that. All right, boys, let's begin. Court is now in session. Today's charge, tech stack. That's something we've all dealt with at various stops in our careers. That's something we have dealt with a lot at our current stop here at Rankings. We want to talk about how to do it right, the pitfalls maybe we've run into when, evaluating certain vendors, how much is too much, how much is not enough, and maybe shed a little advice to people trying to sell, to people trying to build out their tech stack. So yeah, that's today's topic. For opening statements, what we typically do is we try and give a learning or an insight that we've learned from our particular spots in our career, like me in enablement or Zach in a leadership position. What's something that we've learned about tech stacks that we want to share with our listeners? Cole, I want to start with you. What's something you've learned about tech stacks in general? Could be good, bad, somewhere in between.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's so many different ways you could take the conversation, but I think at its core, it's one of the most vital pieces to your organization, right? What you're working out of and how you organize your time and your data really dictates how far you can grow and what success you can have, down to your CRM. Does it have the right data so you can forecast accurately to buy other tools or invest in other areas of your business? To your calling platform, is it a clear, concise call on the other side? Can you log calls appropriately? Can you notate? As you look at the sales stack, are you able to present value with the tools you have? Or are you going just straight old school and sending normal emails, right? Like what are you doing to enhance yourself in such a competitive market? So I would argue that everything is important, but what you work out of really dictates how far you can grow.
Love that. That's great.
My opening statement would be, actually, I'd go a little bit further than Cole. It's the most important thing that you have at your company. And the second part of that is it should be the first place that you're willing to spend on outside of hiring, right?
Yeah.
Like those two are almost 1A, 1B in my mind. If you're not willing to spend on the right tech stack, then it prolongs how long it takes to get good data, clean data, right? I think one of the biggest learnings we've had over the last 16 to 18 months together is clean data is the end all be all. That is how we make decisions. It's how we're going to move through. And also being efficient. If you could have the best sellers in the world, but if they have a task list of 10, 15, 20 items to get done, per account they're talking to or per person, then that slows down. It also makes people dislike their job because they're doing a lot of admin stuff. And I don't know, everybody that has been in sales or been around salespeople, what do they complain about the most? Admin work, right? Everybody wants to be selling, doing the job that gets me paid, not the admin stuff. Well, at the end of the day, admin stuff gets you paid in sales. We all just don't want to do it. I truly believe spending the money on the right tech stack and thinking, like we've talked about in our last few episodes, thinking 2 to 4 years ahead, 2 to 5 years ahead. What's the tech stack I need this time next year? Not that I need today.
Yeah, that's great. And I think we're going to dive into a lot of these ideas. The one insight that I've learned is really, the tech can become a really quick, slippery slope. You can start buying lots of great things and then kind of go down, well, let's get this and we can do this and we can just buy everything. There's a vendor for everything. I found a good rule of thumb, and it's kind of a paradigm or a framework, is really always asking the question, should we build this or should we buy this? As you approach any problem. I can speak with one specific example at Rankings. In the realm of gifting, there was a question of like, okay, well, there are gifting providers out there. There are gifting tech solutions where they go out and do it all. Does it make more sense for us to do this in-house or to go pay for a platform? And ultimately, we had to think about that. We ended up saying on that particular item, build it. We want to bring someone in-house. We want to own that process, right? But that's not always the case. In some situations, like, hey, maybe we can't, or maybe we don't have access to the right person, the right tools or whatever. I don't think it's always one or the other, right? I think sometimes people get stuck in this like, hey, everything's got to be going on a shoestring budget. Can't afford anything. And then I think sometimes there's the opposite problem where, hey, let's just charge it all. We'll figure it out later. You really going in, and it's okay to be like, hey, we're going to spend out of pocket on this. We've weighed it all and this one outweighs it, right? So really just having a good philosophy, I think really helps as you kind of build out your tech stack.
I think there's a lot of things we're going to get into to deep dive into those things because there's so much kind of meat and potatoes there to dive into. You're 100% right. But at the end of the day, for businesses, you're going to have to limp some. Like you can't have it all, right? I think people get taken away by the shiny tech syndrome, right? Like everybody wants the shiny thing. How many things have we said on that say looks and sounds so cool, but at the end of the day, you got to get back to the fundamental foundational items. But we'll get into it, I'm sure.
Yeah. So now that we've gone through our opening statements, I want to move into the cross-examination portion of the episode. This is where we have a handful of questions. I'm going to be focusing towards Cole and Zach, but if we have a guest, they'll also be kind of looped into this. I want to ask you guys some pointed questions, and this can turn into whatever discussion points we want around tech stacks. So first, I want to talk to you guys. Cole, let's start with you. What goes into evaluating a tool? It could be for anything. Do you have kind of a process that you follow? What are some of the things that you make sure are a part of all of your evaluations?
I think at its core, you start out with, what is the need of this tool that I'm looking at, right? I think that's the easy place to start. Do I need this or do I want this? And as Zach said, and Scott, as you said, there's a tool for everything, right? You could get really granular with 1,000 different tools within your tech stack, but what do you truly need? And then what do you want? So when I look at evaluating anything that we're adding, I'm a pretty simplistic person when it comes to building, I think, a tech stack. I look at its core, will this serve us in many different areas, one area, and then how does that impact all of the other decisions we make when it comes to tech? I like something that includes a really good core offerings. Like your CRM should be able to handle a lot of weight because you spend the most time there. So I would start with, as you're evaluating, what do you actually need? But then also start from what makes most sense within your tech today. Do you have the core platform? Do you have a CRM? If you don't have that, it doesn't make sense to go get the shiny whistle or the shiny toy over here that's going to help you in one specific finite detail. You need that core platform first.
If I'm hearing you right, Cole, it sounds like what you're saying is there's needs and wants, right? And that need layer really needs to be defined and kind of structurally sound. We say, okay, we can't do business without these handful of tools. Absolutely. And this is what we want to scale up from. So looking into the future a little bit, whatever tool we want to put on top of this, we want to make sure it plays nicely in that environment that we've created. Can we say this is actually another part of the base? Or is this more in that want category where this kind of goes on top and maybe could be rotated out or maybe is temporary or whatever?
Absolutely. And the process gets more in depth from there, right? After you establish the need, then you're evaluating how does this impact the flow with what we do? If you're talking in BDR world and outbounding, how are my BDRs going to engage with this on a daily basis? And does that add value to their day, or does it take time away for them? Does this add more work, or does it help them, right? So there's layers to evaluating. You establish a need, then you would establish a time, and then a desire, and then the impact. And does this actually help me grow more? So again, we can keep diving deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
But there's a lot when it comes to evaluation.
Zach, do you find, when you say you've developed the need, right? And we're kind of in the process of this right now. You tend to have, on the tools that we've evaluated, it seems like you have kind of a go-to, this is kind of how I like to do it at first, where you get a certain, a core set of vendors kind of on the docket first. Walk me through a little bit, like, what's the approach you typically take when you're evaluating a tool you've decided, hey, I think we need something here?
Yeah. For me, it's going to be two-pronged, right? Number one is I am always going to fast forward in the future, right? 12 months, 24 months, whatever it may be, because I don't want to waste time teaching somebody a tool today and we outgrow it in 6 to 12 months. Now I'm spending time reinvesting and retraining. There's money lost in that, right? So
Right.
I'm typically fast forwarding and working my way back. What tool can solve our need today, but also has the ability to grow into 12 to 24 months from now, right? I do not need to waste manpower and training multiple times over the next 12 to 24 months. I need to train it once, get good at it. That way, as new hires come in, we can train them by who's already succeeding in that tool. So that's typically step one for me. Step two is I ask myself for the end result. Do I want a human hand to be touching this, right? Because we're very much about the experience at rankings. So that my answer is I need a human touch at the end of this for the experience, or I'm okay with AI doing it on our behalf, right?
When you say human touch, do you mean that like a customer experience, like an account manager type person on there, or a support person, or what do you mean?
So when I say a human touch, right now you can go hire AI tools or buy AI tools that cold call for you, right? That it's a fake voice, right? That is going to try to cold call. Well, we don't want that. We want true human BDRs calling. So at the end of it, I know I want my cold callers picking up the phone to be a human. Now I got to work backwards from that, right?
Yeah.
And then vice versa. If I know that I'm okay with touch points going out through email automated, then I would be okay with an AI tool from that standpoint. So
Sure.
I'm always choosing, is it worth the kind of handoff to be either fully AI, fully human, or do I want the best human version with AI that makes it the most efficient, right? So once I decide on that, that will dictate who I want to start looking at from a vendor standpoint of what's going to give me and my team the best route forward.
Yeah, it sounds like you're saying, to use kind of a metaphor here, you've got a little battalion and you're thinking, okay, do I want to add some robots as additional infantry?
Mm-hmm.
Do I want to add, do I want to just armor up my guys and give them better equipment? Or do I want to have some sort of cyborg hybrid of the two, right? And once you define that, no, I'm not adding these other things. Like I want a human brain on the ground. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
From there, now which vendors fit into that? Which ones are going to supercharge my team, not essentially replace my team? Because those are two different solutions, right?
100%. And that's also looking at your personnel, right? Like what talent you have at your disposal. And if you're willing to spend the extra money, because typically, in this case, human workers are going to be more expensive in a lot of cases because it's boots on the ground almost. But at the end of the day, in that task that they're doing, do you get X return on that? What is the ROI of having that? Do we see a better use case scenario? And if we attach AI to them or an automated setup, does it make them more efficient? So there's so many things I'm looking at. And it's also like, where do I want to be again in 24 months from now, 36 months from now? Do I pay more money today to save more money in the long run? So that's typically how I'm evaluating. And I'll have typically 3 companies that I'll go after, one fully AI, one kind of like a hybrid, and then work my way back from there.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting, sometimes the answer may not be obvious. Sometimes you might think like, okay, well, I think this is how I want it, but I'm not sure. So let me get a sampling of each 3 and see what's resonant. Sometimes okay, I know I don't want any of these. So now I've limited my pool of vendors to people who kind of fit an established method.
And I would add on that you want to go beyond that too. Once you find your couple of vendors, like once I or we choose the two top choices, right? Luckily, we have an outbound team and an AE team that we could go A/B test, right? So we can ask for
Sure.
a trial. We can see which one, because at the end of the day, you need your people using it and then bought into it. So that's where that kind of extreme ownership comes in, is like, hey, these are our top two choices. Now you all pick which one's best on the front lines, right? In your kind of scenario, letting them choose their own armor, right? Which one do you
Sure,
like
yeah.
better? Vote on this as a team, and then that gives that extreme ownership that we chose this, we agreed upon this, we got to make it work. And I think that's where that ultimate ownership comes from.
I think that's a great small segue here, which is, I think, leaning on your team as well to help you evaluate these. If you're solely making every decision, you're not thinking about the person who's actually making the call or clicking the buttons, right? So if you're not leveraging your team to help you source out that decision, you're behind.
This is something I wanted to touch on is, okay, so you guys are in different roles. You have different needs, right? Different pressure on you to, say, forecast or view data in a certain way that is not really necessarily as applicable to your frontline sellers, right? How do you balance that? I feel like that's something I've seen a lot, where a sales leader will get kind of swept up and like, oh man, look at all this great stuff I can do. All you guys got to do is adopt this tool now, guys. How great. And they're like, this sucks. I don't want any of this, right? And it ends up being a worse experience, right? How do you balance that? I'll start with you, Cole. How do you balance that so that kind of your needs as a leader are met and your team's needs are met so they actually want to use it?
Yeah, I think fundamentally at my core, I believe less is more, right? The smaller you can make your tech stack and the more dialed in each tool can be, the better you can be. Because to me, it's simple math. Is it easier to get better at 3 tools or 30 tools? Right? 3 is the logical answer, right? Because I have to learn less. So as I look at any tech stack or a vendor conversation, it's, how does this impact my team? What are they going to have to learn? How are they going to implement this? Does this make their day harder, easier? Does it make them better in their role? So I think that's where I start in that balancing act, is really self-identifying our company and our flow. And how does this add to that?
This was something that I found really important from the enablement perspective, which is, as somebody who sold for a decade and, has been on the receiving end of like great tools and bad tools, where you don't have much say in it. Thinking about the adoption of it is important, right? And so if the person who's deciding the tool to buy is too far removed from the actual reality of the seller, you're going to run into problems. I like that point you mentioned, Zach, where you might say, hey, I've got 2 tools here. I could maybe go one way or the other. Maybe some of them might even have better use cases for me. But at the end of the day, you guys need to decide which one makes more sense. I remember we did this, right? We were evaluating a bunch of dialers and things. And so we threw a couple of them in front of our reps and said, hey, what do you think about this? We got to a point where they were like, this sucks. We don't actually like any of this. And it was like, oh, well, from our perspective, everything up until that was so good. Like there were all these great things, and man, like the potential of it seemed so great. But when you actually put it in the hands of the sellers, they're like, we would rather not have any of this, right? And that's something I feel like if you're too far removed from your sellers, like you'll miss that. You might get too swept up in like, oh, but like how good this could be. But without that adoption, I think it's all for naught.
And Scott, I think that's a good point for especially sales leaders that are listening, making key decisions in tech stack, is always test the product first. Because if you do not, most everybody want a 12-month contract, right? And we've had our failures and we've had to pay our way out of 12-month contracts because of it. Mm-hmm. Go test it with your team, because I've never said on a demo that they told me that their product sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it doesn't suck until it gets in the hands. And listen, everybody's ecosystem is different. It might not suck for another company. Not everybody's case studies are going to fit your case study. Right. So test it with your team. And if it takes a week or a month longer, I promise the ROI matters on it. Make your team fall in love with it. Again, it'll give that extreme ownership that we chose that together as a collective. or we declined it as a collective, right? And we
Right.
have to get the job done with what we have. We are deciding that.
Yeah, love that. I want to talk a little bit about, you kind of talk about deciding as a collective. So there's this first part where it's, hey, we've established there's a need. And then there's kind of the, close to the end where you're trying it out. Now there's this middle part where you kind of loop in the buying committee.
Yep.
What does that look like to you guys? Like, what does a good buying committee look like? How does it operate? Like, what have you seen work well and maybe not well? What's something that you found to be a good lesson when it comes to building a buying committee?
I'll jump in first, and I'm probably a little extreme on this because, I mean, we're going through it right now, but I like having all key decision makers in from the beginning. And the reason why is because I'm a firm believer in letting experts be experts. We're going through a process right now that we have me on a call, Scott, Cole, our CFO. We have our director of demand gen on the call, right? Every key player that would be utilizing this system. And the reason why is I'm not an expert in demand gen, right? I know demand gen well. I'm not an expert in it. I have Ken for that. And same for revenue operations. I have Scott for that. So I don't want to have to go back to my team that I'm surrounded by, try to explain these places that you're experts in. So I always, from the beginning, from the first call to the last call, want my key players at the company involved in that. So we're not trying to cross explain things. And it also allows us to learn each other's departments more, right? I get to make decisions and you get to make decisions that not only affect revenue operations, it affect marketing, right? And then it starts showing you care about the other departments. When you start caring about the other departments, now you're winning, right? Because now everybody's decision is not about being selfish. It's what's best for the company. So I'm on the other side of it. I think everybody should be involved from day one that are key handlers of that system.
Yeah, it seems like, I talk about this a lot on a sales and marketing level, where oftentimes you have sales and marketing who are kind of tend to slowly drift away from each other. I think the players in most buying committees are the same, where you have kind of on one extreme, you have, CEO or the executive, the financial decision maker, the head of sales, one of the key decision makers, and then a champion, and then maybe one or two others. They all so fragmented in what they do. And you end up getting this kind of telephone game of like, oh, I love this demo, hop on, and then they're going to get only part of the picture. They're not getting any of the discovery questions, really, right? They're kind of they're making a decision off of a different, set of data. Mm-hmm. One thing that's been really interesting right now in this, we're evaluating some tools right now using kind of what you talk about, Zach, having, hey, everybody's there right at the beginning. We're gonna shock some BDRs where it's like, hey, we're all here, And what I like about it is I see these vendors, they say, okay, well, Aaron, or CFO, let me ask you a couple of pointed questions. And then Aaron came back, well, this is what I care about, and here's what's important to me. And now all of a sudden, I am really understanding, not way later in the conversation, really early in the conversation, what he cares about. Mm-hmm. And I can say, oh, okay, well, yeah, these guys wouldn't really be a fit because that's not going to align with these guys at all. Yeah, and all of a sudden, I'm thinking on behalf of finance, I'm thinking on behalf of account management, right? All these are the departments where sometimes we just get laser focused in our own departments, where it's like, well, I just care about me and my own, and other people could just like, figure it out.
You get blinders on.
Colt, what have you found? Obviously we do things kind of at Rankings this way. Have you seen it work other ways effectively, or what else is important when you're kind of building that committee together or going through the process of evaluating a vendor?
Yeah, I'm going to talk more so about the team as a whole. And as we look at evaluating product, I think it's the spirit of transparency goes so far. Why are we looking at this tool and how does it impact them? You let your teams know why you're looking at a tool, where the gaps are, what the impact is going to be, because it's easier to understand the choices that are made or the decisions that need to be made when you understand the problems or the growth or what we'll run into in 2 years, rather than just looking at how does this impact me today, right? Or what does this impact within my workflow? When people can see the bigger picture, they can align better to the choices that are made. So I think that's point A for me as I look at making any decision that's going to impact my team. Is I want the team to know why we're making these decisions, why we're looking at these tools. So I believe in just radical candor and full transparency as we make decisions like this.
I think Cole makes an excellent point. I'm under the belief that I would rather overshare than undershare with my team, just for the sheer fact that people, first off, you want that buy-in, right? Like they want to know where we're headed. People are at a company, they want to be loyal to it. They want to understand where we're going, what we're doing, the decisions are being made. We always preface, at least I know I do on my calls, is this could change tomorrow, but this is what we're thinking today, right?
Yeah.
And I think giving people that insight of, like Cole just said, why we're making this decision. We're thinking 2 years from now. And that shows people like how to grow into leadership roles, how to train the next person coming in. If you become a mentor for somebody we just hired, you can explain to them now why we change these tools and why it works this way. Everybody wants to know the why behind things. It's our jobs as leaders to ensure they understand that and can explain it themselves.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, my team says, oh, we made this decision because Zach said so. We failed them in that decision-making process, right?
100%.
They should know this is why we made this decision to pivot towards this tool or add this into our workflow process or change this process to another one. They should be able to articulate that to me, to Zach, to their counterparts. And that's just the spirit that we want to build within our org.
Yeah. I think kind of an overall theme here is you want everyone to be, what we talked about last episode of this kind of ownership mentality. That means if everyone is acting like an owner, that they are privy to, hey, here are the decisions that we're making. Here's why we want to make it. And you want someone to be like, hey, you want someone to message you and be like, hey, really quick, I used this tool in the past, I really liked it. Or, hey, I'm really nervous about this because of X, Y, and Z. Can you make sure you consider this situation? And all of a sudden you get this feedback like, oh, I wasn't even aware that was an issue or something to worry about. Now that gets rolled into the discussion, and that could be one of a couple things that shift you over from one vendor to another that would have otherwise potentially been the friction point. Hey, we're all adopting this. Sorry, guys. I really like this. You're just going to have to deal with it. You've now put up a barrier in front of your leaders and your sellers who it's kind of an us versus them, as opposed to, hey, we need this, right? And to go back to, we had this experience early, kind of middle of last year where we thought, hey, we really need this, in this situation was a dialing solution. And we thought like, hey, this is the right solution. And as we went through the process, kind of together with the team, at the end of the day, what the team sentiment was, hey, if this is what's required, we don't want it. We would rather just do a little bit of extra work in these places that we're happy with that, right? The trade-offs, we don't find the trade-offs meaningful. And we can still get all this other data and we can go about it a different way, right? You just don't want to find yourself in a situation where you've invested in this tool, you're locked in, and your reps hate it, and you the thing that you were promised of like, hey, you can get all these great things, you're not able to get any of it because nobody's bought into it, no one's using it the way they want, or they're just like doing the bare minimum or doing what they have to in order to, to keep their job or whatever. So great stuff. Love this. I want to move over to our objection portion of the show. This is where we take kind of a modern convention, something that might seem like status quo, and we object to it, and we kind of give our reasons why. I'll start with my objection here, and this is the idea that once you have your tech stack, you've got it, and you're good to keep it. You've got it figured out. You never need to change. I think for a couple of tools, it's great to have longevity there. On the whole, I object to that. I think that you need to be agile and nimble, and you need to recognize that a tool that you've invested in that you thought like, hey, I've used in the past, I really like it. You may run up into that ceiling a lot quicker than you think. And there are other tools who have had that tool in their sites for the last 24 months, and they've invested tons of resources to overcome them, right? And they've changed their reputation, they've changed their feature set, and they've changed what they're able to do. And, you have to swallow your pride a little bit or check your bias a little bit, right? But ultimately, you just can't be complacent with what you have. Yes, I'm more comfortable in these set of tools. Yes, I like this. But that doesn't mean that's the best thing for the company. I think you really need to be okay with, hey, it doesn't make sense to change. Hey, is it worth taking a risk on this? Hey, these guys are making moves. Hey, some of the other players in our space are using these tools instead of the ones we're using. Is that worth investing in, or at least trying, for a quarter or 6 months, right? So I feel like it's really easy to be like, yeah, we've used these tools forever. We're stuck in our ways. You just don't ever want to find yourself in that position. That's kind of my objection there. Cole, what's something that you object to in the space?
Yeah, I've been ready for this one the whole call, gearing up for it. There's a saying that I hear a lot. I've even said it myself, and I fundamentally disagree with it now. Our product sells itself. I object to that so strongly, your tool is only as valuable as your experience is. What I mean by that is how you approach your conversation, your pitch, how you navigate the different conversations between our industry and other industries and whoever's in front of you. Your product might be great, but if you don't deliver a great experience, I'll never be able to see your product because I'll choose another vendor with a great experience. Your product does not sell itself. Your experience sells.
It's so fascinating because, yeah, we see this time and time again with vendors where within the first couple minutes of a call, you're sidebarring and be like, I don't know, man, like this just like you've already based on the way that whether it's the BDR or the AE or whoever, how they talk, the kinds of questions they ask, if they just jump straight into a slide deck or whatever, it may be a great solution and you may have the best engineers in the world or whatever, right? But at that front end, if you fail to deliver a good experience to a buyer, you will look elsewhere because it's a competitive market. Every tool, there's a competitive market. There's somebody who's right there, and maybe that's the difference maker, right? Is they realize, hey, we're within 5% of quality or features or whatever, but our experience is way better, right? And that shows, from the beginning. So yeah, I think you're dead on there, Cole. Like you should be like that's something we think every time we hop off a vendor call, we think about like, okay, did we make any of these mistakes? Like, what are our BDRs saying? What are our AEs saying? Like, are we falling into some of these traps? And like, it's a really good refresher of like, just because we know internally just how great the stuff we sell is, like people don't. It takes people a while to consider entertaining the idea. And that starts with that initial experience. I think that's a great one.
Yeah. When it comes to a vendor, there's a lot of context clues. Zach gave one of ours, which I couldn't imagine as any stronger buyer signal than 5 people being on a call. Right? If you see 5 executives on a call, they're there to buy a solution. We're not just shopping around because there's a lot of time invested into this, right? So those are easy things you could look for on how to elevate your experience or be prepared for what's to come. So again, I think the more you invest in your experience, the more your product can shine. Your tool won't sell itself.
Yeah. Love that. Zach, what about you? What's something you object to?
Yeah, something that I would say I object to is piecemealing tech together to get for the solution. I would say you should fight with everything in you to have one single source of truth by all means necessary. We have talked about this multiple times on Under Oath, and data is the most important thing you can have that's clean, right? It impacts decision making. It impacts the clients you go after. It impacts your sales. Having multiple sources of truth makes getting that data clean that much harder. You want to do everything in your power to have one single source of truth. To Cole's point earlier in the podcast is don't want 30, we want 3, right? Less is more. So for us, we have all agreed HubSpot is going to be our single source of truth. We are investing heavily in HubSpot to ensure that happens. And we have had to hire experts on HubSpot. We're going to have to partner with agencies because of HubSpot. We are going to probably end up investing hundreds of thousands of dollars a year into HubSpot to ensure our single source of truth, to ensure attribution for marketing, to ensure BDRs have the easier path to make calls and email people and sell things for our AEs and the AMs to be able to communicate and upsell, like one single source of truth by all means necessary.
It's interesting too, Zach, because if I apply that to, like, I can think of so many different scenarios. One example is, at lots of different stops we had kind of a cadence tool, outreach, sales loft, whatever, right? And I can remember so many times where, oh, this is what it says in Salesforce, but I know this is how many dials I made, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, it's like, okay, well, you have 2 competing things, and one is right and one's wrong, right? Well, when you're in that executive meeting and you're trying to run the report on how many dials does it take to get a call, how many this, and you're kind of working back from that number. You're not going from sales life. You're going from that single source of truth. So it doesn't matter if that's right in one context in one other tool. Like at the end of the day, it needs to be right where it matters, right? And so it kind of begs this interesting question. You can say, hey, but this tool will make you sell more or have that much more outreach and do all these other things. But the trade-off is that it's temperamental. You gotta, like someone in enablement, I couldn't tell you how many hours I've spent trying to reconcile data from kind of these third-party tools, right? And so like there's all this other baggage that comes with it. When if you would say, hey, instead of this, and I'm not bagging necessarily on a cadence tool. It's like for some markets they're great and for some industries they're great, but for a lot of situations, you might be thinking, oh, but I get all this extra output and that's worth it. At the end of the day, if that comes with all this extra baggage and it doesn't end up making informed decisions down the road with your executive team on how many more people we should hire and how much it costs, that could impact how much we need to spend on marketing, all these other things, right?
Yep.
And so I think you just need to be really prudent in, is this a tool that's going to mess with that single source of truth? Is it something that's just kind of on the side that helps reps kind of in those other ways? And I think in some cases, and this is something I think you've done a good job, Zach, where you say, hey, instead of buying a tool, I'm going to buy a person, and they're going to remove friction. I'm going to invest in another enablement person, and they're going to make it easier to call by helping enrich lists and doing all this other extra work, instead of being able to crank through your list faster and just like burn through your accounts. I would rather invest, instead of a tool, I'd rather invest in a person. Sometimes that's potentially the right solution. So don't always necessarily just like throw a tool as a Band-Aid, right?
I think that where a lot of people, and even we made mistakes in the beginning, I believe, is choosing a HubSpot, right, as a single source of truth, and then trying to go to these third parties that integrate with HubSpot. And I think that's where a lot of people mess up, is they sell us so well on how well they integrate with HubSpot, but there's so much that doesn't work correctly, right? There's so much that doesn't action and trigger back and forth. Oh, just connect to Zapier and that will definitely trigger over when this happens. And in theory, that sounds exactly what we've been looking for. That's why it goes back to like always have your team A/B test it, because those action and triggers don't always action and trigger. And then the data doesn't always stay clean because it gets lost in HubSpot land over here, right? Sometimes simple is better. Sometimes what you deem the longer route today is actually the shorter route tomorrow to get the data that you need. So be slow, methodical. Also, I'm going to be contradictory here. Also be fast, right? Fail fast. A/B test it, make the decision, find out if it was right or wrong, then move on to the next one. I think one thing we do great here, we make our decisions, we figure it out if it's right or wrong, go to the next one. Some people take 6 months to make a decision and it being wrong, and you wasted all that time. So try to move as fast as you can, but also methodically.
I think that kind of speaks to that point that I was making, which is like, don't just be satisfied with what you have. Like, if you're finding like this is getting stale, great, move on. Go invest in another solution, right? Go dig up something else. Like you can, and it's okay to fail. It's like, hey, you know what? Like we got what we got from there. Time to move on to something else. And like,
I love this.
Extract it and then move.
I love this saying, if you're not failing, you're not trying, right? Like nobody is making 100% of the right decisions.
That's right.
Go make some decisions. They're going to be wrong. It is either going to make your next decisions that much more informed, or be able to teach the people around you how to make better decisions. Nobody's ever going to be right all the time.
Love it. Okay. Well, that's going to take us to our last part of the episode, which really is what we call our closing arguments. It's just kind of one key takeaway that we like to leave with the listeners. It could be something we've already said, we just really want to hammer it home, or something that has just kind of popped into our head to summarize our thoughts and feelings of the topic today, which is kind of tackling tech stacks. Cole, what's a closing thought that you want to leave with the listeners?
Yeah, I'm going to double down here. Experience. I think it comes down to the experience that this tool will add to your team, right? The experience that you have when you're looking at a vendor, the experience it'll bring to the results. I think if you focus on that through every step of your search, your implementation, to your end goal, if you're always focused on the experience, it will deliver results for you.
Love that. Yeah, my closing thought here really is have a process for like identify what your process for evaluating technology is. Don't just willy-nilly trip into it, right? No, okay, this is who I involve. This is how fast we move. This is the criteria we like to follow. and I have a set of must-haves, which is it's got to not mess with our single source of truth, right? Go into it with a process. Think about the process. Think about who should be involved. Once you've built that, evaluating tech becomes a lot easier, and I think you end up getting a lot less misses when you go and try. Zach, what about you?
I'm going to go two directions with this. The first one is involve your key players from day one in your decision making. Make sure everybody is aligned. We all agree to move in this ship together towards this goal, and this is what we pick. My second side would be use every time that you're evaluating any sort of piece of tech, you're on demos to evaluate how you do things internally. You have no idea how many times we have watched somebody and what you, Scott, to your point earlier, do we do that? Do we make that mistake? Is that what people experience with us? Or, oh my God, could we let people experience what we just experienced? Do we have the tools at our disposal? Do we have the people, the personnel?
Yeah.
And you have no idea how much better our team has gotten from just watching other people present to us, follow up with us, take us through their onboarding. So use it as twofold. Don't only get better because of the piece of tech you're going after. Watch it how you're being served the tech, how you're being demoed the tech, the people that's doing it, the follow up, the onboarding, all those things, and use it as a way to have your key players involved, to everybody to see this process. Might be a sales pitch for you.
Yeah, I think if you ever get swept up in a tool that you love and you embrace it, it's a good chance they did a great discovery. They followed up in a meaningful way, right? They had great assets. They did all these right things, right? You should go back and be like, what did they do right? And compare that with what you're doing. I think it can sometimes be illuminating of like, oh, we thought that this area would be fine, but man, we actually might be losing quite a bit of conversion here because we thought it didn't matter. All that matters.
I think the perfect show of that is we were just on calls that company A said that they were going to be $10,000 a month. And because of how that went, we all were like, gosh, that's expensive. Company B on the next call said they were $30,000 a month. And we was like, it's a pretty fair price.
Yeah,
right?
30 grand, whatever.
For the exact same type of deliverables. And because of the discovery and how they walked us through and the follow-up, we felt triple the price was worth its weight in gold.
Yeah, love that. Okay, Under Oath listeners, we appreciate you tuning in. If you want to give us, show some love, give us a little 5 stars on Apple, on Spotify, on YouTube. Really best thing you do, we post clips from the show. Share the clips on LinkedIn or social media. That helps, get exposure. If you found something meaningful that you liked a bit from the show, comment on one of our posts. Or if you have a question or a topic you'd love for us to talk about or bring on a specific guest, we'd love to hear that from you. That's going to do it for the episode. This case is closed.
But a sail built on trust, oh, that's the flair. Honesty sells, beware the snare. Under oath, you gotta keep it true. Win their hearts with what you do. Not just the close, but the journey too.